Welcome, welcome, welcome. Give us a couple of seconds while we get set up and underway. We'll be kicking off very shortly.
Hey, hey.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm even greater now that I can hear you and you can hear me.
Yes, that's always a good thing.
Absolutely. At first, I will apologize if there is a little bit of background noise. Uh, Hopefully, it's not too bad.
Yeah, so far it's fine. And it's great because we do have quite a lot of things to discuss today.
Absolutely.
So let me give a quick overview of what's on our kind of agenda today. So we will start with a topic that I have mentioned last week during the space about how addresses work in Beam wallets. And it's important not just it's a general kind of knowledge, but because of the upcoming desktop wallet release that introduces, as we said many times, a couple of important features. One is the hardware wallet integration, and also the first version of the Beam Messenger app. And it's quite an important uh, thing to understand, like in terms of how these both of these features are going to be used in relation to addresses in Beam wallets. And then we're going to move to the upcoming EPOCH 18, which is the next voting epoch. The current one is 17. And we are going to have a couple of important votes in that next epoch. So one of them is going to be about the BMEX allocation for the Nifrit project. Well, not exactly for the project, but rather for the um, liquidity mining in Nifrit. And I'll explain how it works and like what it means. And the second one is going to be about the DEX launch, and it actually is divided into two parts. The first part is about the Beam price. Last week I mentioned a couple of possibilities. I'm sorry, BeamX price. Last week I mentioned a couple of possibilities of how we can approach this moment where BeamX is going to finally be traded on this DEX, and how its price can be determined. Initial price, of course, it can always change later during the trading, but we do have to set some kind of an initial price and provide liquidity. And the second part is going to be about the liquidity mining programs for the DEX. And there were a lot of questions about that also from the community. And finally, we will talk about, we will actually answer, I hope, most of the questions from the community. We have quite a lot, and some of them are indeed very important, like, for example, about the admin keys in the contract. So, yeah. So, as you can see, we have quite a lot of things on our plate.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to cover and some pretty exciting topics as well.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I'm really excited, like seriously excited these days because first of all, we finally see all of these building blocks of the confidential DeFi ecosystem coming together. We have finally started the on-chain voting with this kind of relatively, I would say, easy test vote, but the serious ones are coming, and it's a great feeling, after so many years of hard work, like seeing all of these building blocks coming together. Um, yeah, so really exciting times, like a lot to do, but we do see also major progress in many areas. So let's start with the first topic, which is going to be about the Beam addresses. And I would like to kind of go back in history. When we first launched Beam, the only addresses that we had were SBBS addresses. So SBBS is this kind of encrypted messaging system that is built into our wallets and nodes. And we have used it to create transactions in Mimblewimble, which are interactive. And it really helped us with the usability because it was much easier to just send somebody this SBBS address instead of exchanging data in some other way. It was all built into the wallet, seamless. and very, very easy to use and nice. However, over time, two things happen. First of all, we have added additional types of transactions, specifically Lelantus transactions that are allowed us to implement both offline transactions and max privacy transactions. And also, we added hardware wallet support. So hardware wallet support was actually added twice. The first time it was way, way back, I don't know, 2 and something years ago for Trezor, and they wouldn't, integrate us back then because, small market cap is an issue. But this time we have added it for Ledger, and Ledger allows you to implement it as a separate application that you can install on your device. And upcoming desktop wallet release includes support for Ledger Nano S and Ledger Nano S Plus. And even back in the day when we have added support for the Trezor, we have ran into this issue. So the way SBBS works, it basically generates a pair of keys, a private key and a public key, and the public key is obviously used as an address. SBBS is completely secure, like you cannot trace who is sending messages to whom and who is receiving them because it decrypts an entire channel, so not just one message, but like a bulk of messages. And hardware wallet was too small and could not, like, both in terms of the processing power and memory, and could not have, effectively decrypted or stored information on the cell level that was required to handle SBBS addresses. So we have done this very important step of separating what once was like basically an SBBS key into two parts: an internal signature and the actual delivery method, the SBBS, or like any other kind of method of actually delivering the information about the transaction to another wallet. And at first, we called this internal signature a wallet ID. Now, in retrospect, that was a bad naming decision because the word ID implied identity and worried some people that it somehow, could have exposed their identity in some way. So what we have done is, first of all, we stopped calling it wallet ID. And the second is we have generated a new identity or a new internal signature basically for each transaction, and additionally another unique key for SBBS. So every time you send a transaction, two new keys would have been generated. And this was completely fine in terms of obviously all the aspects except for one. We could not have implemented a well-functioning address book. And those of you who are long enough with us probably remember our struggles with making the address book work properly. Finally, we gave up and we just, it's still there, but nobody uses it. And that's how it was not a major feature, the address book back in the day. So we kind of, put it aside and moved forward. Today, however, the situation is different because when you are using your hardware wallet, you wouldn't necessarily want to verify the signature of actual recipient of the transaction, regardless or dependent on the delivery method. What you would like to have is this kind of, I would say, more like accurate understanding of who is the recipient. And then when the transaction is actually created by the wallet and sent, then all of the information about the delivery method, the SBBS, or the voucher for the off-chain transaction is used to actually deliver the message. So this separation between the internal signature, and we still don't have a good name for it, like we called it now endpoint internally in the documentation, or maybe you saw some mentions about that. But it's basically the signature that you are signing on your hardware device, or if you don't have a hardware wallet, then inside the regular Beam desktop wallet. And then you have a completely different additional mechanism that also encrypts this and sends it to another wallet to create the transaction or to the chain. So if we would continue to create a new internal signature every time for each new transaction, it just would mean that anytime, even if you really know this person, his address, in Bitcoin or whatever, you would still have to verify a completely new set of symbols each time you're sending. And this gives us an opportunity to redo this a little bit and do this kind of overhaul on how this works. So you still can create a new identity whenever you want, or like we still need to find a good name for it. You can create a new internal signature, but you don't have to, right? You don't necessarily have to do it. And it might not be created automatically. You might say, yeah, I do want a new signature. But if you don't, then the same signature will be reused. It does not affect privacy in any way. It only affects kind of the identity. How identifiable are you to somebody who are you're communicating with? Like where you're sending a transaction to someone, right? Today it happens over Telegram or whatever. So you are already in contact with this person. He knows who you are. So it would be easier for them to verify that it's actually your wallet sending the transaction. So all of this is to kind of raise or like start this discussion of how we can implement that and bring back the address book, tie it together with the hardware wallet design and also with the upcoming messenger application, because the same exact problem will exist there. You do want to see, some kind of a label that repeats itself and not have a completely new random address for each new conversation with the same person. It would be kind of weird. So this is the point that I wanted to explain last week, but we didn't have the time.
And this, like as you mentioned, this the complexities involved with hardware wallet will also be seen somewhat in the messenger with like the ID situation again. And we've talked a little bit about this before. The messenger will use like the SBBS for communications and this kind of thing. Can you give us a little bit more insight into the messenger and what to expect and when to expect it kind of thing?
Yeah, so the messenger is using SBBS as a transport mechanism. It means that you, just like we have done in the past, we have added new types of messages to SBBS, like very, I would say, obvious examples are asset swaps and atomic swaps that have these offer boards that also use broadcast via SBBS to publish those offers. And now we will also be able to send messages at first to specific users. And in the future, we will also discuss how to do it, most efficiently at ad groups or channels or whatever. Like obviously, it's not going to support initially the scale of Telegram, and we are not going to compete with Signal, not for, at least for now. But the first version is going to be very simple. You send somebody your address in a way, and then you can start chatting with them. The version is already working on .NET, but it's a little bit like there are some fixes, cosmetic fixes that need to be done. So I don't want to kind of show it to you or send you to download and play with it. And once we fix those issues, I think in really few days, because the issues are really minor, we will do a .NET release, official .NET release of the upcoming wallet, and then everyone will be able to take a look.
Wicked. Sounds good.
Okay, moving on. So let's start with Nifrit. Nifrit, as you know, is a collateralized stable that is going to be released on Beam very soon. And in order for that to happen, Nifrit team has officially asked from the BeamX DAO to allocate a portion of BeamX tokens for the liquidity mining in Nifrit. I believe the number is 6 million, but it's all in their official white paper and the proposal. And obviously, we will kind of write all of that down. But what I want to say is two things. First of all, I would like to explain why should we even allocate this BMX for Nifrit? What does it mean for users? How do you get, or what do you get out of it? And also the process of how it's going to be voted on in the next epoch. So let's start with the first part. Nifrit works in many ways very similar to MakerDAO, DAI, or Liquidity collateralized stable coins, in that you have your CDP position over collateralized debt positions, which mint those stable coins. And then there is a notion of a stability pool. The stability pool is where people lock stable coins, and these coins are used internally to balance the system and make it more stable in terms of uh, responding to changes in the price of the collateral. It's not a new mechanism. Liquidity does it in exactly the same way. So why would I do that, right? Why would I lock my stable coins? And the answer is liquidity farming. So what do you farm usually? So in each project, you farm some kind of a governance token, and it's called Maker in the Maker DAO. It's called LQTY in Liquidity. And in case of Nifrit, instead of creating a new token to farm, uh, the farming would be actually of BMax. So when you lock your stable coins in the stability pool, you will be farming BMax, and this will actually connect this Nifrit application, or like make it a part of BMax ecosystem, right? And obviously there will be also that, part of the profits was going to go into the DAO vault. So this kind of integration is possible through the allocation of BMax coins. And this is what the vote is going to be about. So the vote is going to be whether the DAO agrees to allocate 6 million or some similar amount of BMax coins for the Nifrit project. So as I said, it's going to be voted on in the next epoch, which starts in a week and a half or something like that. I need to check. But in order to participate in this important vote, uh, you need to lock your BMax in this epoch, because the way the voting works is that you need to all of your BMax that you want to vote with locked in the previous epoch. You cannot lock, like you can lock in the same epoch, but these BMax will only effectively be counted towards your vote in the following epoch. The reason we did it like this is to avoid like last minute, people just pouring a lot of BMax in the last second and then just taking over the vote. So you do have to lock all of the BMax that you are going to use for your voting power in the previous epoch. Okay, so that's about the vote number one.
And this we shared a little bit of information about in last week's newsletter. We had kind of a quick fire voting for fun to get people up to speed with the process and this kind of thing. If you haven't, you can check out the last newsletter and get a bit more information. And this is going to be like the Nifrat vote for the allocation of BeamX will be the big like first vote using the Beam's on-chain governance. Is that right?
Yeah,
And and
exactly.
and one of the things that like I mean the forum post by Nifra is very like short and brief and gives like information to what they have, and then they've got the link to supporting documents and this kind of stuff. But one of the things that really stuck out to me is that they mentioned like every DeFi ecosystem needs a stable asset. And like this is so true and very like it becoming ever more obvious as like things are kind of unraveling in the crypto space with certain centralized stable coins coming under scrutiny and this kind of thing. uh, and the team has like been putting in the effort and work to push the decentralized version, which I think is very cool, and for me far more exciting than like issuing a sort of custodial like USDT or USDC version on Beam. I think this is
Yeah,
far more
uh,
interesting.
absolutely, absolutely. So like the reason I'm excited about Nifrit is, first of all, I really like this, decentralized stable coins that use non how would I put it, like not a collateral, which is another stable coin, which is actually centralized. Like you do have, for example, in large part of DAI is backed by USDC. So having like really kind of decentralized coins as a collateral, in my opinion, is one of the important prerequisites for being a high quality decentralized stable coin. So obviously the collateral will start with Beam, but it can be expanded theoretically, I hope, in the future to maybe to other assets. But the second part is that these kinds of over collateralized stable coins has shown very well, behaved very well during all kinds of climate, right? When the markets were crashing and when the markets were highly volatile, I think historically this model of building a stablecoin shows great resilience to all of these conditions. So yeah, it's in my opinion a good model to follow. So yeah, I'm excited for the launch, and definitely we will. We're very close to it. I hope, like once we have this vote and we have the allocation, I think it will be shortly after that Nifrit can launch. Um, yeah, so that's about Nifrit. Okay, so now we get to the second part, which is the launch of the DEX. So the launch of the DEX means that BMAX will finally have a price. Now, in the previous space, I have mentioned two kind of possibilities for what this price initially can be, or like how to approach this problem. The first option is to just agree on some initial price and then launch the DEX with liquidity set to this price and see what happens. The second option is to provide like a separate mechanism of price discovery. It's something that has been done by several projects in the past. And the idea of price discovery is that there is a phase which lasts for like some fixed period of time, say 2 weeks or something like that, where users can lock, people can lock separately Beam and BMAX tokens. And eventually, by the end of that period, the ratio between the amounts of tokens locked in that contract determines the price. And then people who locked their Beam or BMAX get LP tokens as a function of that price, right? So, for example, if I lock just 1,000 Beam and the price was determined to be like 1-to-1, then they basically get back LP tokens equal to 500 Beam and 500 BMAX. Now, there are pros and cons to both approaches, and today I will try to make a case that we might consider setting Beam X price without the price discovery. And I will also try to make the case that we might consider setting it in something around 2 Beam for BMX. Okay, so that's the point. Now, before I start with the explanations, why I think it's kind of the price that can be set, I just want to say that everything I say here is kind of the suggestion and opinion. It will and should be discussed in the coming days before, obviously before the vote, even though the vote is going to be about BMX allocation for liquidity mining. But we just need to determine this mechanism before we can launch the DEX. So everything I say is up for debate. But I will try to make a case that 2 Beam for BMX is an interesting price that we can start with. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of history. Back in the day when BMX was created, a long time ago, like, I don't know, 2 years, we as a foundation raised $2 million. And in return, we gave something like 10%, a little bit less, I think, of the total allocation of BMX, which, as you know, is 100 million, which means that the price of BMX for those investors who participated in that round was around 20 cents, 22 cents to be precise. Okay. So obviously, if the initial price of BMX will be set to currently like the amount larger than 22 cents, these investors will be in position that they can be like in the profit, and it might create a selling pressure of BMX. So it's possible to consider that this price should be probably lower than uh, this margin. Now, back when this raise was done, if we take the, let's say, relative market cap of Beam and kind of the fully diluted market cap of BMX potentially, and we take the market cap of Beam now, which is obviously much lower than it was then, um, it makes no sense, right? Obviously, to price the BMX higher than it was, and it makes sense that this reduction in BMX relative price to what it was kind of sold to initial investors should be somehow correlated to the current market cap. Okay, even though it's very important to understand that BMX is not yet another token on Beam ecosystem. It's not just another confidential asset. Beam is a coin and it's used for financial transactions. BeamX, however, is a governance token of the entire BeamX DeFi ecosystem that, as we can see, is growing and is adding more and more vehicles like DEX, like the stable, and more in the future. And also using the bridges which were recently released, it is also basically controlling in some way or kind of affecting the liquidity that was breached over from other blockchains, right? So there is no direct correlation or like immediate correlation between Beam and BeamX price, even though it kind of makes sense that if you are governing something that is worth more, then the governing token is also rising in price. So the reason I say that is if we take, let's say, the price before, Binance delisting, because right now, and not a trading advice, anything I say here, but the price makes no sense, right? 66% of market cap of green, with all due respect, it's not real, right? It's not a real price. But if we take the price before the listing, which was around, I would say, 11 or 12 cents, and we correlate it with the market cap that was when the BMX was initially sold in the first round. And all of these calculations will obviously be explained like in either a forum or a Medium article. You don't have to do the calculation right now, but it kind of gets to this range of 2 beam per PMAX. Any questions so far?
From my side, no, and I don't see any in the chat.
Okay, now listen, like I know you will probably have a lot of them. Like let me kind of finish the entire idea, and we will have plenty of time to discuss all of that in all possible channels, right? Because it's a very important question. But let's first of all talk about two things. Like first of all, the advantages and disadvantages of setting the price versus the price discovery. So let's start with setting the price. Like if we set the price and we all agree that we will start with a 2 beam for BMX price, what we are going to do instead of the price discovery, we will do a liquidity accumulation program. What it means is that we will create a pool, a special kind of pool, that people will lock both Beam and BMX in the ratio set by this price, 2-to-1. And in return, they will receive LP tokens that can be locked in a liquidity mining program at a beneficial conditions, like early bird kind of discount, or not a discount, the opposite, right? So once you provide liquidity to this liquidity accumulation pool, you get LP tokens and you can lock them immediately for a period of time that you decide upon, let's say between like 1 and 12 months, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, up to 12. And then you get a preferential allocation of BMX's liquidity mining for the period that you have locked. Obviously, when the pool, like the real DEX pool starts, all of this liquidity is transferred to that pool and the trading starts with this liquidity in the pool. So this accumulated liquidity is the liquidity that the pool will start with. And obviously, people who add liquidity after this phase also get LP tokens, and they can also lock them in a similar liquidity mining program. But they will get like less, right? A little bit less. Like they will get like the same rate, except for this early bird or like this, uh, bonus. Like once again, all the numbers will be provided like next week as a suggestion, and we will discuss them. But what I'm describing right now is like a concept of how we can do it if we do set the price up front.
Makes sense. And I think like from the last one that you mentioned about like the accumulation for liquidity, I think this is important because a lot of stuff that I've seen, like when they launch with very like launch a token, they launch with such little liquidity, and some people buy and lose a lot of money, like because there's no liquidity there initially and this kind of stuff. And I think it's better to go slowly and do it right and make sure that any buyers and sellers and whatever people are doing are more protected in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. So it does provide initial liquidity for the pool, which is, in my opinion, important. And it like it has these kind of more kind of clearer and faster start for the DEX. Now, the second option, which is the price discovery, means that we do like this full process of like accumulation, like in the price discovery pool. The benefit is obviously that it's, I would say, kind of less arbitrary in some way. Like you do provide for the community the opportunity to discover the price. However, there are several concerns or like possible things that we should think about. First of all, we do have much or more beam outside, like and liquid than BMX, because the BMX was only distributed as a promotional staking about a year ago, and about 1% of BMX, 1 million BMX was distributed. This means that potentially the price can be much higher, and it can like create some sell pressure initially from either the investors or people holding BMX. It also makes this process longer, even though it's a less of a concern, because I don't really want to make it faster. I want to make it right. But it has these additional kind of things that we should consider, like when we select one of these two approaches, right? Okay, so here is the right something to think about. We will provide all of this information, obviously, in the form of an article or a post, so you can review it. And if we decide to move on with a fixed price, then we will work and quickly develop the accumulation phase and launch it, so we can get started. And the second thing that we will do in the same EPOCH 18 is we will vote on the allocation of BMX for the liquidity mining program for the DEX, right? So there will be two votes in EPOCH 18, both important. One is the allocation for the liquidity mining for the fleet, and the other one for the DEX.
Wicked. That was gonna be my question. You just answered whether the like two options will be voted on via the DAO. I do have a third question that I know the answer to, but I think it's important to emphasize here. Like these two options are simply for the launch, right? Obviously, the price after the launch will be decided by buyers and sellers in the free market kind of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So once the initial pool is initialized, the trading starts, and then just like in any decentralized exchange, you can buy, sell, get provide liquidity, get LP tokens, and then sell the LP tokens. Yeah, so the entire process.
I have a question here that is more in line, like more related to the DEX itself, and maybe slightly to the launch as well. Will the Beam X pool as I understand, there's a few different like fee options. So which, I guess the question is which fee option, or would that also be voted on or presented in like uh, in the launch criteria and this kind of thing. And also, I guess a follow up question is if there's one pool on the DEX for, say, the Nefrat stable coin and Beam using like fee A, can someone else also launch a pool with fee B or fee C and this kind of thing?
Yeah. So the answer to the first question is I would presume that, and it probably applies to all of the assets on Beam right now, and in the short foreseeable future, is that like my opinion, and we're going definitely to discuss this, that the maximum possible fee should be selected because uh, if you like take the analogy of let's say Uniswap or like other DEXs that use similar model, uh, only the very stable assets or very high like volume, high liquidity, volatile assets have the use of lower percentages, right? Because when you have a pool of like stable to stable, obviously you can take a 0.1 or whatever percent. Not the case for BMX, not even the case for Beam. So in this case, I think that first of all, like I would think that it might be prudent to choose the higher fee margin. Regarding your second question, yes, it's possible to create like if somebody created a pool of let's say BIP to Nifrit using like 1%, or somebody else can create a different pool within these three options that we provide. And I expect that the market chooses the pool that is best kind of representing the amount of risk. Because when you're a liquidity provider, after all, you're providing liquidity to the pool, and these fees need to cover your kind of risk that you take in terms of like impermanent loss or like any disbalance that might occur. So when you are a liquidity provider, the reason you choose one of those pools is exactly to kind of balance the amount of fees that you can get from the amount of trades, because the more trades happen, obviously, the more fees are generated versus the risk that you're taking. Um, so yeah, all of the options will be available, and I think that the market will choose by itself. By the way, there is also an argument that even the largest margin that we have like in the offering today is not enough, uh, and it's a very valid, valid concern, and we should also discuss that whether those numbers, make sense in the current situation.
Absolutely, and like I think what you mentioned about like having the higher fee for the Beam BMX pool and this kind of thing. I think that anyone that had like provided liquidity and experienced severe and permanent loss would likely strongly agree with you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Providing liquidity is a difficult business, and you know, you do take a lot of risks. So yeah, it's definitely a concern. On the other hand, you always have to balance the fees with the how attractive the pool is for trading. So it's a good kind of market driven trade-off. Yeah. So that's
Exactly.
that's that's how it should be. Okay. So let's move on a little bit further to a couple of questions that were asked by the community, but they are very important questions. And like I will start with them, and then I will probably move to a few more. Right now, I would like to say that I will probably not be able to cover all of them, which means that we will continue next week. And by the way, it might be a very good idea to have an AMA either on Telegram or Twitter or anywhere else during the week, because I believe that we have quite a lot of things to consider in the coming weeks. So I think we might have kind of an additional AMA uh, in addition to regular spaces. Okay, so the question is that um, I will read it as it was written. The quick question: in the light of what happened with MakerDAO Oasis, does Beam have an admin key? So, great question, very important one, and I would like to explain exactly how it works with Beam smart contracts in general, because like the implementation, like the how smart contracts implemented determines everything about it, right? How decentralized it is, how it is controlled, and how it works. Okay, so first of all, on Beam, we have several types of smart contracts. The first type is an unmutable, uncontrolled, right? Like the smart contract should be, deployed and forgotten. And this is, for example, the asset minter. The asset minter allows you to create new confidential assets through a contract with a limited supply by providing a cap upfront. This contract cannot be modified, cannot be changed, and it's not controlled by anyone. Once it is deployed, it is frozen, right? And this is this kind of the first type of the contract. The second type of the contract is a contract that does not have an admin key, but is upgradable. What does it mean? It means that there is no key or any kind of admin function or that allows anyone to do something in the contract while it is operational. However, it is possible to upgrade the contract to a different version. Now you would say, okay, so what's the difference, right? You can upgrade the contract and then do whatever you want. Yes, but every contract deployed has a predefined period, which is defined when the first contract is deployed, of how long it takes before the upgrade takes effect, right? So let's say there is a contract running, and then we or somebody that sends an upgrade, deploys an upgrade. This upgrade is not enabled immediately. There is usually a long period, about 2 weeks, before this upgrade takes effect. And the reason for that is that if this upgrade is either malicious or contains a bug or has like some issue that you just do not agree with, you have time to react, right? You have time to withdraw your liquidity or do something else. Now, this information is available and it should be presented like better in the Blockchain Explorer, but it's there, right? We don't have too many contracts for now, but it's an important parameter of the contract, like how long is the upgrade period for it. There is a downside to this story, which means that if a critical issue is discovered with that contract, it will also take 2 weeks to upgrade it, right? So there is a kind of trade-off here that, the malicious upgrade will not be in effect, but also an upgrade that fixes an essential bug also cannot be fixed quickly. The third type of contracts is contracts that are, doesn't matter if they're upgradable or not, usually they are upgradable, and they do have some admin functions. Now, the reason for this is like, first of all, at least at first, like my personal preference as the tech lead for the project is to make important contracts upgradable because you can find an issue, you want to like change something or add something, we're still in the discovery phase. So I would say most of the contracts are upgradable. Regarding the admin function, the admin function is only used for essential kind of, I would say, operations. And it's important to know that these operations are visible. So yes, like for example, the BeamX DAO does have a function that allows to allocate BeamX for certain topics because the facilitator of BeamX DAO needs to be able to perform these operations. But obviously, all of these transactions are visible because they're transactions out of a contract. It's not like somebody can use the confidentiality of Beam to do something that no one will notice. And the admin is known in advance specifically of important contracts. So yeah, it can be traced, right? It requires some trust initially, but yeah, like if it cannot be done without it, then we do have a admin function in the contract. So this is kind of the full scope of all of the possibilities of what can be done with the contract. Specifically, DEX does not have an admin key, so you cannot Nifrit is not going to have one either, according from what I saw from the code. The code was audited, right? So yeah, specifically Nifrit, for example, is following the model of Liquidity in that it doesn't even require active governance. It's auto balanced, fully. So yeah, like it's going to be completely automatic. It probably is going to be upgradable, just to avoid situations where a lot of like liquidity is locked and then there is some issue discovered that can be fixed, and it will not be.
Yeah, I mean, this has happened a few times on, for example, Ethereum, where there's been no admin key and no upgradability, and stuff has got bricked in a contract. I think it was like Parity or something that had millions at the time. The Polkadot guys, they had a wallet or something on a
Yeah,
multi-sig wallet or something, and then bricked the funds, and they couldn't. It was just gone forever, pretty much.
yeah,
So that's not ideal.
no. So the goal is eventually to have all of the contracts, completely unchangeable, locked.
Yeah,
But I would say that some period of time should pass, and like we should see like that they work really as intended and well. Yeah, which means that like just like any contract, any new contract deployed on any blockchain should be taken with care. We should not rush to lock tons of liquidity in a new contract. But we saw great examples of many DEXs and other projects slowly gaining a lot of trust, and more and more people are looking at the code. Time passes, and today we have projects that are trusted, like not trusted, but considered very very reliable.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so we do have a lot of additional questions that I'm not going to answer, but I promise I will answer them either next time or just in text form, because they are good questions. Questions about critical bugs in mobile wallets that are not addressed for a long time. Questions about hosting the applications on a centralized server for now. All of these are great questions, and they do have answers, and I will get to that. One of the things that I would like to talk about now is about there was a question about incentives that I partially answered. And yeah, like one of the considerations for any operation, when you're locking liquidity, providing liquidity, when you are locking your stable coins in the stability pool, all of these actions, should be incentivized, right? And the idea of this incentivization, they're twofold. First of all, yeah, you want to gain more like BMAX and like liquidity mining and all that, but it also improves the stability of an ecosystem, right? It's not like a free meal. Like when you are locking stable coins in the stability pool, you do provide more stability to the entire ecosystem. And all of these things will be eventually tied together because if you think about it, you have like Beam, you have BMAX, you have Nifrit, you have the LP tokens of those. All of them are traded, right? And there is obviously a kind of correlation or kind of complexity involved in all of these moving parts working together. So the more stability we have in the system in form of more liquidity, more reserves, it means that it can survive higher periods of volatility, like or crashes or any other kind of events that are common in all markets and especially in crypto markets. And we saw that if those mechanisms are implemented correctly, they work well. And if they're not implemented correctly, they like can ruin like everyone, right? So there is a good reason to use those liquidity mining programs in addition to just liquidity farming, but it also helps in some way to stabilize the ecosystem, in my opinion. Um, Another good question is about the current situation with the voting. There are several kind of subtopics to that. Uh, Immediately after we had our first vote, there was a question about multiple choice voting, right? So we explicitly avoided, at least in the first version, the multiple choice voting for one reason. The on-chain voting is difficult enough, and we want to perform it for like kind of, or at least try to limit it to a more serious and important DAO decisions. If it's kind of something relatively minor, I think it can be voted on the forum, like unless like there is major disagreement. And that's why when we have multiple choice voting on chain, it can cause all kinds of problems. So like that's why we omitted it from the first version. Doesn't mean we're not going to add it later if we see real need for that, right? But the first vote was about the name for the Beam Messenger, and it was for testing purposes. Like most votes will not be as kind of fun as that one. Another question was about how the implementation of the proposals can be automated, because obviously when you vote on the name for the application, somebody should then go and change the name and do the commit and do the release and all that. And indeed, there is a possibility of building a mechanism when you have a contract, let's say with modifiable parameters, and these parameters can be directly affected by a vote, right? For example, let's say you have an interest rate in some application, and this interest rate is voted on every period, or every few periods, or a few epochs, and then it is directly determined by the vote. So you have, like, for example, an option to increase it by one or decrease it by one, right? And every epoch you vote on it, and it's automatically updated. It is possible. I do hope we get to this stage. I think it's fascinating when there is such direct impact, without any facilitator needed. It's good for everyone, and we're not there yet, but we will definitely try to do it once we have the chance. So that's the dream, right? That's the decentralized dream. You vote, and the parameters of a smart contract are updated. Which brings me to the last question I wanted to answer today. Where is it? It was worded absolutely brilliantly. Yeah. The question is about longevity. I think the Beam team is quite small, and I worry what would happen if some of the most influential people in this project were no longer around. A great question was asked on the forum. So it's an amazing question, right? So right now, yeah, we still need people. Even Bitcoin is kind of still dependent on people to be updated and upgraded. Like, yeah, there is a decision-making process by a large community, and it's important and it works. But then eventually somebody needs to write the code, somebody needs to check it, test it, do the commit and do the deploy. So there is this kind of process. Yes, Beam team is not, very, very large. We try to make it that, it's resilient enough, but yes, there is still a lot of work that we need to do in this department. I want to say like two things. Like, first of all, as a strategic kind of direction, we are moving towards this more and more decentralized, more and more kind of independent, automated, and long-living blockchain. I think we have proven over the last 5 years of Beam project existence that we really want this to be a proper cryptocurrency, decentralized, independent, like completely autonomous of everything, providing great privacy. In many areas we succeeded, but yeah, a lot is still to be done. But that's the way we're going, right? So I think we build great technology. It's very versatile. It's very kind of feature rich, allows us to do a lot of things, very flexible to be applied in many different areas. Beam blockchain is kind of one of the key, I would say, kind of the key parts of that takes us forward. But other than that, we have a lot of kind of additional things we need to do, applications, integrations, and many other things that we need to develop. So yeah, right now, this project does depend on people in Beam team. Um, but yeah, well, I hope nothing will happen to all of them at once. Other than that, I think we will be fine.
And one of the other things that has been happening recently, I mean, very recently, with like what Nephrite has come out and suggested and requested from the community is kind of getting the BMX allocation in return for like their protocol generated revenue and this kind of stuff going back to the BMX style treasury. And I think this would be a very good like kind of practice to happen more frequently with new dApps that are coming to fruition, as it kind of creates this kind of self-sustaining revenue generation that can then be used to for whatever the DAO decides and that kind of thing. And I think getting to that stage of being like very self-sustaining as an ecosystem will be very cool, and it's great to see it like starting to form already.
Yeah, like this process, and like you know, we can talk about it like for a long time because it's really fascinating.
We
I
have
really like
we
like
have 2 minutes.
yeah, that's a problem. Okay, so before we go all philosophical here, let's once again recap what we have been talking about and the two important things that are going to evolve in the next epoch. So first of all, Beam X allocation from the liquidity mining portion of the BMX pie, uh, about 6 million BMX, 6% of the total supply, uh, allocated to liquidity mining program on Fleet. This is going to be a vote number one in Epoch 18. The second one is going to be about BMX allocation for liquidity mining for the DEX. And at the same time, we need during this period of time to kind of discuss and determine of whether we want to set the BMX price to, let's say, 2 Beam and create a liquidity accumulation program, or if we cannot agree of what this price should be and nobody's convinced, and there is like a wide variety of opinions, we are doing a price discovery, and then we launch the pool with like after the price discovery. So this is the uh, kind of important topics for the upcoming weeks. Um, and don't forget to lock your BMX now in Epoch 17 if you want to vote in Epoch 18. Wow, yeah, a lot of stuff is going on. Thank you very much for listening. Listen, Alec, we're going to continue having these discussions. We will post everything that was discussed here in the forum and other articles. Um, and we will be, online and listening and participating in all these conversations. It's all very important, and a lot of work is ahead of us coming weeks. But at the end of it, we will have the DEX and the stablecoin and Beam, which is, in my opinion, pretty amazing.
Very amazing and exciting times. Thanks, guys, for joining, and we will be back next week. Also, Alex, you mentioned that we might have a AMA to cover some of the questions that we obviously can't cover in the spaces and that kind of thing. Would be cool.
Yeah, yeah. So the way it works that like even when we are online, obviously the conversations on the channels run very quickly, and Max Flaxer is doing very good job of kind of uh, gathering together the important questions and issues. But uh, given the very active period that we have in front of us, I think it would be a good idea to have an AMA in the middle of the week, not wait for the next space in order to clarify most of those issues. I'm sure there will be a lot of opinions, discussions, and we need them in order to move forward.
Absolutely. Wicked. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Alex, again for
thank you, Gus.
many an explanation and some insights into what's happening and some of the decisions that are going to be need to be made by the DAO coming up and very exciting times for Beam.
Definitely, thank you, Gus. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch.
See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.